The last ribbon came off with a sound so small no one else seemed to notice it. A soft metal click, then the black slide beneath it was bare. My mother still had one hand on my lapel. Her other held the small sewing pliers she kept in a cream leather kit inside her purse. She had already removed the first 2 rows. The last one took more force. When it came free, a clutch back snapped loose, struck the hardwood floor, and spun beneath the photographer's tripod. "Hold still," she whispered. The photographer lifted her camera. Behind her, the lake shone through a wall of glass. White chairs faced the water. Beyond the ballroom wall, a quartet was tuning, and one violin kept dragging the same thin note through the air. My left ear caught only the vibration. My right heard my mother say, "This is Grant's day." I looked down at the empty ribbon bar on my service dress coat. The holes were still there. So was the dark rectangle where the fabric had been protected from light. She had not erased anything. She had only made the absence visible. "3," the photographer called. My mother stepped away and closed her fist around the ribbons. 2, the door opened behind us. An old man entered with a silver glasses case in one hand. I had seen him once that afternoon beside the bride. I knew he was her grandfather, nothing more. He looked at my pilot wings. Then at the empty bar, then at the clutch back on the floor. The photographer lowered her camera. The old man did not ask who I was. He looked directly at my mother and said, "Why did you strip her rack?" My mother's fingers closed so tightly around the ribbons that a pin cut into her palm. A bead of blood appeared between her knuckles. The bead of blood stayed between her knuckles, but she did not look at the cut. She looked at the old man. Embarrassment would have made her hide the ribbons. Fear made her grip them harder. 11 days earlier, I had been sitting at my kitchen table in Colorado Springs with a bowl of soup going cold beside my laptop when an email arrived congratulating me on becoming the majority service disabled veteran owner of a company I had never heard of. Northline Crisis Logistics. At first I assumed it was spam. Then I saw my full legal name, not Mara Ellison, Mara Jean Ellison. My date of birth was beneath it. So were the last 4 digits of a service record number I had not used outside government paperwork in years. I stopped eating. There are habits that stay with you after enough time in a cockpit. You check the instrument that looks wrong before deciding the instrument is broken. You confirm the warning before touching the switch. So I did not call Grant. I opened a notebook and wrote down the time, the sender address, the subject line, the company name, and every number I could see. Only after that did I search Northline. The website belonged to my younger brother. His photograph filled the homepage, navy suit, open collar. One hand resting on the hood of a rescue truck he did not own. Beneath him were the words founder and chief executive officer. There was no mention of me. That should have made me feel better. It did not. My phone rang. "Mom." "Mara, honey," she said, bright and careful. "You have your uniform ready for the wedding, don't you?" My hand stopped above the keyboard. My mother had spent most of my adult life treating my service as an inconvenient weather pattern. Something happening far away that occasionally disrupted holiday plans. She had never once asked which ribbons belonged on which row. Why? Because Natalie's family respects tradition. Her grandfather served. It would mean a lot to them. What pause? The Air Force, I think, you think? Grant says he was important. I turned back to the screen. Grant was smiling beside a paragraph about leadership under pressure. "Which uniform does Grant want me in, your blue one?" "My service dress." "Yes, that. And the full ribbon rack?" Another pause. "If that's what people normally wear." People, not me, not her daughter who had worn it for 17 years. "I'll bring it," I said. Her relief arrived too quickly. "Oh good. Come early on Saturday. We're doing a private family photo before the ceremony." After the call, I took the garment bag from the hall closet. Inside, the coat still smelled faintly of dry cleaning solvent and cedar. I laid it across the bed, checked the insignia, then opened the side compartment where I stored copies of my retirement orders and discharge paperwork. The retirement orders were there. The medical summary was there. The copy of my discharge record was not. I searched the compartment twice. Then the desk drawer, then the fireproof box under the bed. Nothing. At the bottom of the garment bag, beneath a folded white shirt, my fingers touched hard plastic. I pulled out an orange rescue whistle. One edge had melted inward. The cord was blackened in 2 places. It had hung from my survival vest on a mission I rarely described because 6 people had come home from that valley, and 1 man in my crew had not. The whistle had not made a sound since. I kept it anyway. For years I told myself it was because throwing it away would feel disrespectful. The truth was less noble. I kept it because some part of me still believed survival was a debt, and debts had to remain visible. I closed my hand around it and looked again at the empty space where my discharge record should have been. Then I returned to the kitchen, opened a fresh page in the notebook, and wrote 1 sentence. My family has access to documents they should not have. Below that I wrote another, do not warn them yet. Northline's public website was polished enough to make doubt feel unreasonable. There were photographs of supply trucks on flooded roads, temporary medical tents, pallets of bottled water, and men in reflective vests pointing at maps. Grant appeared in almost every 3rd image. He was never carrying anything. He was always explaining. The company biography said Northline had been founded on the principles of military rescue, speed, accountability, and calm under pressure. Grant had never spent a night in uniform. As a teenager, he quit the volunteer fire academy after 2 weekends because the boots hurt his feet. In college, he changed majors 4 times. When I deployed, he sometimes told people he had almost joined the Air Force but stayed home because Mom needed him. Mom had never needed him. She had protected him from needing anyone else. I found the first reference to veteran ownership buried in a press release from the previous year. Northline had been recognized as a veteran-led emergency response company. The phrase was carefully chosen. In advertising, veteran-led could mean almost anything. In a government contracting profile, ownership meant something specific. I searched state business records, procurement announcements, archived versions of the website, and conference brochures. Most named Grant as founder and chief executive officer. None named the veteran supposedly controlling the company. Then I found an old capability statement cached on a county procurement page. At the bottom, beneath Northline's certifications, were 6 words. Service-disabled veteran-owned small business. The contact table listed Grant as Chief Executive Officer. It listed me only as qualifying owner, no title, no biography. No photograph, just my legal name beside 51%. I sat back from the screen. On paper, I was not inspiring Northline. I was Northline. The chair creaked when I shifted my weight. That sound brought me back to the room. I opened the notebook and drew 3 columns. What I knew, what I could prove, what I only suspected. Under the first I wrote, my name is listed as majority owner. My veteran status is being used. Grant controls the company in practice. Under the second, the congratulatory email, the cached capability statement, the missing discharge record. Under the third, Mom gave him the documents. My signature was copied. The wedding is connected to the timing. I did not write fraud. Not yet. People use words like fraud when they are angry. Investigators use them when every easier explanation has failed. I created a folder on an encrypted drive and saved copies of every page with the date and source. Then I printed the most important records and placed them in a sealed envelope. For the next 4 hours, I built a timeline. The first mention of veteran ownership appeared 18 months earlier. That was 2 months after Mom asked me to send her a scan of my disability determination because she claimed her insurance agent needed it to update the family medical history. The operating address for Northline changed 6 months later. The new address belonged to a mailbox service less than 3 miles from Mom's house. A local business article said Grant had secured a bridge loan to expand Northline's fleet. The lender had filed a claim against the company's trucks and equipment. Another article described an upcoming federal emergency logistics contract as transformational. Contract had not been awarded yet. The article quoted Grant. Our company was built from lessons learned in combat rescue. When lives depend on you, hesitation is a decision. I knew that sentence, not exactly. Close enough. I opened the locked file where I kept my award citation. One line described the choice I made when the weather was collapsing and 6 wounded people were trapped below us. Recognizing that delay would constitute a decision with fatal consequences, Major Ellison initiated the approach. Grant had shortened it, cleaned it, turned it into something that fit beneath his photograph. I compared the dates. His first public use of the phrase came 3 weeks after Mom helped me move records out of a storage unit. By midnight, the folder contained 37 files. I named it Northline 1, then I duplicated it. One copy stayed on the encrypted drive. The other went onto a plain black USB that I placed inside the lining of my garment bag. The next morning I found a reference to a document called the M. Ellison Continuity Plan in an index search result. When I clicked it, the file was gone. The preview contained only part of one sentence. In the event of owner incapacity, operational authority will remain. Nothing after that. The file had existed for 11 minutes before being removed. Someone was cleaning. That was when I called Grant. He answered by video from what looked like a hotel room. His tuxedo jacket hung from a lamp. On the desk behind him were 2 champagne glasses and a white box tied with gold ribbon. He smiled when he saw me. There she is. Why is my name in Northline's ownership file? The smile stayed, but his eyes changed. His right thumb found the ring on his left hand and began turning it. Grant was not married yet. Natalie had given him the ring early because it had belonged to her father. He wore it during wedding events even though the ceremony was still days away. He rotated it once, then again. I was going to explain everything this weekend. Explain now, it's complicated, it has my name on it. Mom said you'd understand after the wedding. There are sentences that answer more than the speaker intends. I looked at his hand, the ring kept moving. How much of Northline do I own? He laughed softly as if I had misunderstood a joke. Technically, that is the only kind of ownership that matters. 51% on the certification documents. And everywhere else, Northline is my company, Mara. Then why is my name on it? His thumb stopped for half a second, then started again. Because investors like continuity, government buyers like certain structures. You have qualifications I don't. My disability is not a qualification you can borrow. No one borrowed anything. Did I sign an operating agreement? He leaned closer to the camera. You told Mom we could use whatever we needed to keep the family stable. When you said it, when, Grant? He looked away. Years earlier, Mom needed surgery after an insurance dispute. I told her to use whatever I had, savings, leave my house if necessary. I had not given my brother ownership of my identity. Send me every document with my name on it, I said. We can go through it after the wedding. Send it today. His expression hardened. You know what happens if this deal collapses? I know what happens if my signature is on something I never saw. 43 people work for me. You employ 43 people. That's what I said. No, it isn't. Grant exhaled and lowered his voice. Mom put her house up for the bridge loan. I had not known that. He saw it in my face and pressed harder. If Northline fails, she loses everything. Natalie's family has money in this too. This isn't just about you. My left ear had begun to ring, a high, steady tone. I moved the phone to my right side. It became about me when you put my name on it. You always do this. Do what? Make everyone feel like they're failing some standard only you understand. I almost answered. Instead, I watched the ring, still turning. Send the documents, I said. Then I ended the call. For several minutes, I sat without moving. Grant had not defended the paperwork. He had counted the people trapped inside the lie and offered them as protection. I opened the award citation again. The sentence he used came from a valley where smoke and dirt had turned the air brown. We were holding north of the landing zone when the ground team reported 6 survivors, 2 unable to walk. The safe decision was to wait. The weather was closing. The aircraft had already taken damage. Our crew chief, Ben Calder, was bleeding through his sleeve where metal had cut him above the elbow. Command told us to hold position. Ben looked forward through the cockpit and said, "They won't have 10 minutes." I knew he was right, so I took us down. Dust erased the ground. The aircraft shuddered as we entered the valley. Ben stood at the open door, guiding the rescue team in while the 6 survivors were brought aboard one at a time. We lifted out with warning lights burning across the panel. Ben died before we reached the medical station. The citation said I acted with courage. I never read it that way. I read it as a document describing the minute I chose 7 lives and came home with 6. Grant had taken that minute and turned it into a leadership slogan. I found an archived video of him speaking at a disaster management conference. He stood beneath the Northline logo and told the audience, "In rescue work, you don't wait for perfect conditions. You go when people need you." The logo behind him was an orange circle with one side bent inward. I paused the video. Then I took the melted whistle from the garment bag and placed it beside the screen. The shape matched, not approximately, exactly. He had copied the melted edge. That detail had never appeared in a public photograph. Only family had seen the whistle closely enough to reproduce it. Until then, I believed Grant had stolen documents. Looking at the logo, I understood he had taken something else. He had taken the part of my life I could barely touch and built his company around it. I photographed the whistle beside the screen, saved the image to Northline 1, and added a new line to the notebook. "This is not a misunderstanding." Below it I wrote, "Find out who else believes the story is his." I had enough evidence to ask questions. I did not yet have enough to answer the question that mattered most. Who would be hurt if I acted? Northline employed 43 people. Most had probably never seen the ownership documents. Drivers, warehouse crews, dispatchers, and field coordinators did not choose the story Grant used to win contracts. Natalie had money in the company. I did not know how much or whether she understood what she had invested in. Mom had put her house behind the bridge loan. That did not excuse anything. It did mean a careless move could punish people who had never touched my records. I considered reporting Northline immediately. A complaint could trigger a review, preserve records, and stop the pending contract. It could also warn Grant before I knew how far the lie extended. So I chose a narrower objective: go to the wedding. Find out what Natalie believed, identify who controlled the documents. Then act before the contract became final. It was not the safest decision. It was familiar. I had spent most of my career entering unstable situations because waiting for certainty would have cost someone else more than it cost me. That logic had saved lives. Inside a family, it had mostly taught people that I would absorb the risk. The wedding was held at a resort on the Virginia side of Lake Thorne, less than an hour from the house where Grant and I grew up. I checked in Friday afternoon. The woman at the desk handed me a cream envelope containing the wedding schedule, a room key, and a note from Mom. "Private family photographs at 2:45. Please be dressed and downstairs by 2:30. The ceremony was scheduled for 5. I placed the note beside the black USB on the desk in my room. Then I hung my service dress coat where the afternoon light showed every thread. The uniform still fit. Not perfectly. My right shoulder pulled slightly where an old injury had changed the way I carried weight. The coat felt tighter across my back than it had at retirement. I polished my shoes on a towel near the window. Every 40 seconds, the ice machine in the hall released a tray. The first crack sounded like a hydraulic warning. The second took me back to a cockpit for half a breath. By the third, it was only a hotel ice machine again. I laid the ribbons on the bed in order and attached them to the rack. The lower row first, then the middle, then the top. I pressed each clutch back into place and checked the spacing with the edge of a room service menu. One of the backs was bent. It had always been bent. I turned it until the pressure held. My phone vibrated. "Mom, come early. Bridal suite. We need to make a few adjustments before the family photo." Adjustments. I slipped the orange whistle into the inside pocket of the coat. The USB went behind the lining of the garment bag. The printed document stayed locked in the room safe. At 2:10, I took the elevator down. The bridal suite occupied a large room beside the ballroom. When I entered, Mom was standing behind Natalie, fastening a strand of pearls at the back of her neck. Natalie turned and smiled. Her dress was simple from the front and elaborate from the back, with rows of small covered buttons running to the waist. "You came in uniform," she said. "Your invitation asked for it." "Grant said you probably wouldn't." Mom's hand stopped on the necklace. Only for a second. Natalie crossed the room and hugged me carefully, avoiding the ribbons. "I'm glad you did. My grandfather will be too. Air Force?" "His whole life." Before I could ask more, someone called Natalie from the adjoining dressing room. She gathered her skirt and excused herself. Mom watched the door close. Then she looked at me. "You could have worn the smaller rack." "This is the smaller rack. I mean less. Less what?" She reached toward my collar, changed direction, and smoothed a wrinkle that was not there. "It's a wedding, Mara, not an award ceremony. You asked me to wear the uniform." "I asked you to represent the family. I am part of the family." Her mouth tightened. "You know what I mean." The door opened again. Grant entered without knocking. His tuxedo was tailored well enough to hide how much weight he had lost since I last saw him. Faint shadows sat beneath his eyes. He looked tired, expensive, and pleased with himself. The ring was already on his left hand. His thumb found it when he saw me. "You look official," he said. "I am official. Still doing that?" "Doing what?" "Making every sentence sound like testimony." Mom gave him a warning look. Grant ignored it and came closer. We should talk after the reception. We could have talked when I called. Not here, then send the documents. His jaw shifted. Today is not about Northline. You put my name on Northline. You don't get to decide when it is about me. Mom stepped between us. Both of you, stop. Grant lowered his voice. If you make a scene today, 43 people could lose their jobs. The announcement tonight keeps the bridge lender from calling the loan. Mom keeps the house. Natalie keeps her investment. How much did she invest? He did not answer. How much, Grant? Mom said that is private, so were my medical records. Silence settled over the room. Grant stopped turning the ring. For the first time, his hand was completely still. The silence held around that stillness. I had reached the part he had already decided to defend. Natalie called from the next room, asking Mom for help with her veil. Mom looked at Grant. He left without another word. Before following Natalie, Mom faced me again. Please. Just get through the pictures. I heard exhaustion in her voice. For one dangerous second, I almost let it become an excuse. Then I remembered the logo shaped like my melted whistle. What are you asking me not to say? Nothing. What are you asking me not to show? Her eyes moved to my ribbons. There it was, small. Fast, clear. I stepped back before she could touch them. Mom forced a smile. The blue and red clash with the wedding colors. You asked for the uniform. I didn't know it would look so busy. You have seen it before, not in photographs. She was lying badly now. Not because she lacked practice, because the clock was moving. A coordinator appeared at the door and told us the photographer was ready. Mom picked up her cream leather sewing kit. She carried it with her into the family photo room. The room overlooked the lake through a wall of glass. The immediate family had been arranged in 2 rows beneath an arch of white roses. Grant stood beside Natalie. Mom took the place on my right. The bride's grandfather had not arrived yet. The photographer adjusted the lights and asked everyone to move closer. Mom leaned toward me. The full rack is too much. No, Mara, no. Her smile remained fixed for the camera. Do not do this to your brother. I am standing in a photograph. You know exactly what you're doing. I looked at her. That was when I understood she did not see my uniform as clothing. She saw it as evidence. The photographer asked Natalie to turn slightly toward Grant. Mom opened the sewing kit behind the folds of her dress. I saw the pliers in her hand. Don't, I said. She caught the edge of my lapel. It will take 1 second. The first ribbon slide came free before I decided whether stopping her physically would become the scene Grant wanted. The second followed. No one else was looking at us. The photographer was adjusting Natalie's train. Grant watched from across the room but did not move. His thumb turned the ring. Mom pulled at the final row. The bent clutch back resisted. She tightened the pliers. Just this once, she whispered. Let your brother have something that belongs to him. The metal snapped. The clutch back struck the floor and spun beneath the tripod. The photographer lifted her camera. Mom stepped away with my ribbons hidden in her fist. Behind us, the door opened. The old man with the silver glasses case entered the room. He looked at my pilot wings, then at the empty black bar. His eyes dropped to the broken clutch back on the floor. The photographer began to count. The old man crossed the room before she reached 2. Why did you strip her rack? Mom's hand closed. A ribbon pin pierced her palm. She answered before I could. What rack? The old man finally looked at her. The one Major Ellison was wearing. Mom's face remained composed, but her injured hand moved behind her skirt. He looked at me. What aircraft? There are questions civilians ask because they are curious. There are questions military people ask because the answer will confirm what they already know. Pavehawk, I said. Which rescue squadron? I told him. His grip tightened around the silver case. Then he asked, Do you still have the orange whistle? The ballroom, the photographer, and my mother's blood on the ribbon pin seemed to move several feet away. I reached inside my coat and brought out the whistle. The melted edge caught the light. The old man stared at it. My name is Arthur Rowe, he said. I knew the name. Lieutenant General Arthur Rowe had commanded the rescue wing above our group during my final deployment. He had signed the recommendation that became my Distinguished Flying Cross. I met him once at the ceremony. He shook my hand, spoke Ben Calder's name before mine, and told me the award belonged to the entire crew. I had not recognized him because the man in my memory wore a uniform beneath bright hanger lights. The man before me was 82, slightly stooped and wearing a dark suit with a white rose on the lapel. His eyes had not changed. What are you doing here? I asked. He glanced toward Natalie. trying not to embarrass my granddaughter by arriving late. Grant laughed from beside the flower arch. The sound was too quick. Small world, Arthur looked at him. You must be Grant. Grant extended his hand. Arthur did not take it. Instead, he looked at the ribbons hidden in Mom's fist. What was wrong with them? Nothing, she said. They were too much for the photograph. Did Major Ellison ask you to remove them? Mom looked at me. No, I said. Were they damaged? Not until she used the pliers. The photographer stepped backward as if she had suddenly realized she was standing inside something that might become evidence. Grant moved closer. This is a family misunderstanding. Arthur's gaze settled on the ring turning beneath Grant's thumb. Then your family should have no difficulty explaining it. Mom pressed her bleeding palm against her dress. We are behind schedule. Arthur nodded, then stop wasting time. He bent, picked up the broken clutch back and placed it in my palm. Do not lose that. The gesture was small. It changed the room. Until then, everyone had been deciding whether my uniform was appropriate. Arthur treated the damaged piece as something that mattered. Mom opened her hand and returned the ribbon slides. One carried a thin line of blood. I left them in my hand. The empty bar stayed on my chest exactly as Arthur had found it. The photographer asked whether we should continue. Natalie looked from my mother to the ribbons in my hand. No, she said, we'll do the photograph later. We never did. The wedding coordinator hurried everyone toward the ballroom. Arthur stayed beside me as we walked. At the doors, he said quietly, who knows you're connected to Northline? I stopped. You know about Northline? I know Grant has spent 2 years telling investors that combat rescue shaped his leadership. That doesn't answer my question. No, it tells you why I'm asking. Before I could respond, the doors opened and music rose around us. The ballroom had been transformed. Candles floated in shallow glass bowls. White roses climbed the columns. A projection screen displayed photographs of Grant and Natalie from childhood through their engagement. Arthur took his seat near the front. I sat beside Mom at the family table. Grant remained standing near the stage, greeting guests. Every few minutes he glanced at Arthur. He did not look at me. That told me he was still afraid of the wrong person. Dinner began. For 20 minutes nothing happened. Silverware moved, glasses filled. People laughed at stories I could not hear clearly from my left side. Mom wrapped a napkin around her injured palm and kept it below the table. Then the lights dimmed. A voice announced a short film about the families and experiences that brought the couple together. The first photographs were harmless. Natalie as a child wearing a construction helmet. Grant at a school science fair, family vacations, graduations. Then the screen went black. A rotor sound filled the room. My body recognized it before my mind did. The next image showed a pavehawk descending through brown smoke. My aircraft. The photograph had been taken from the ground near the landing zone. I knew every mark on the fuselage. Grant's voice came through the speakers. Northline began with a lesson I learned during a rescue operation under hostile conditions. The room narrowed. Another photograph appeared. Ben stood at the open door of the aircraft, one hand raised toward the rescue team. I was visible through the cockpit glass, but the image had been cropped so my face was difficult to see. The caption read, "The mission that inspired Grant Ellison to build Northline." Grant continued, "When lives depend on you, waiting for perfect conditions is not caution. It is a decision, my cadet crew chief." His voice, the rescue photograph dissolved into the Northline logo. The orange circle with one edge bent inward, inside my coat, the melted whistle pressed against my ribs. Until that moment, I had still been considering a private solution. A demand for corrected documents, a controlled withdrawal. A way to protect Natalie before she understood what she had married. Then Grant used Ben's last mission as entertainment at his wedding. The decision became simple. I would not protect him from the truth again. Natalie turned toward me. Her face had lost all color. "Were you on that aircraft?" I looked at Grant. He was watching me now. His thumb had stopped moving. "Yes," I said. No, the video continued behind us, but she no longer watched it. "How much of Northline do you own? I learned 11 days ago that your paperwork says 51%. Her chair shifted backward. "Grant told me you approved the structure." "I have never seen the structure," Mom whispered my name. I ignored her. Natalie leaned closer. "How much do you know about my investment?" "Nothing. How much was it?" She swallowed. $600,000. Across the room, a man in a gray suit had stopped eating. I had noticed him earlier beside Grant. A security key hung on a short, retractable cord beneath his jacket. When our eyes met, he looked away. Natalie followed my gaze. "That's Ian, Northline's chief financial officer." Ian stood. Before he could reach us, Grant climbed onto the stage. The video ended. The lights rose. He took the microphone with both hands. "Before the toasts, I have one piece of news I've been waiting to share with the people who made all of this possible." Mom closed her eyes. Her shoulders dropped. Grant smiled at the room. "This afternoon, Northline received formal notice that our federal emergency logistics proposal has entered final award processing. The contract is worth $4.6 million. Applause broke across the ballroom. Ian remained standing beside his table. Arthur did not clap. Natalie stared at Grant as though she had never seen him clearly before. Grant raised his glass. "To family and to the quiet heroes whose sacrifices made this company possible." Then he came down from the stage, walked directly to me, and placed his hand on my shoulder. From a distance it looked like gratitude. Up close, his fingers tightened against the fabric. "Not tonight," he whispered. I removed his hand. "Do not touch the uniform again." The room was still applauding him. The contract was nearly his. Mom believed the house was saved. Natalie's money was inside the company. My ribbons were in my hand instead of on my chest. Grant thought Arthur's recognition was the reveal. He had no idea it was only the first witness. Ian reached our table before Grant could answer. He looked at me, then at the empty ribbon bar, then at the slide stained with Mom's blood. "Major Ellison, did you approve Northline's ownership structure?" Grant stepped between us. "Tomorrow." Ian did not move. "I need her answer. You work for me." Ian touched the security key beneath his jacket. "I work for Northline." Natalie stood beside him. "So do I, according to the $600,000 I put into it." Grant glanced around the ballroom. Dozens of guests were watching without pretending otherwise. "Library," he said. The resort library sat across the hall. Grant entered first. Mom followed. Natalie brought Arthur. Ian waited for me. I went upstairs for the garment bag. The trip took less than 7 minutes. When I returned, everyone was still standing. No one had sat because sitting would have made it feel like a conversation rather than a rupture. I placed the garment bag on the table and removed the black USB from the lining. Mom stared at it as if I had drawn a weapon. She did not ask what was on it. Ian held out his hand. "Nothing on this proves a crime by itself," I said. "Contains the first email, archived procurement records, the ownership statement, copies of my real signatures, the citation Grant quoted, and a timeline showing when my private records were in my mother's possession." Grant laughed. "There, she admits it." I continued, looking at Ian. "The originals remain where I found them, except for one file deleted after it appeared in a search index." Ian took the drive and inserted it into his laptop. Arthur touched my elbow and guided me into the hallway. The ice machine released another tray. The crack of falling cubes echoed against the tile. "Were you planning to report him?" he asked. "Yes." "When?" "After I knew who else would be damaged." "You mean after you found a way to protect everyone?" "I mean after I knew the facts. That is not the same thing." I looked through the glass doors into the library. Mom was speaking quickly to Grant. Natalie stood apart from them. Ian was reading. 43 employees, I said. "Natalie's money." "Mom's house." Arthur nodded. "And who did you list as the person responsible for protecting Mara Ellison?" I did not answer. He looked toward my empty ribbon bar. "Your mother recognized my name before you recognized my face. My service history was in the wedding program. If Northline used your citation, Grant knew whose signature was beneath the recommendation. And Mom asked which ribbons I planned to wear. She was not hiding you from a photograph," Arthur said. "She was hiding you from a witness." The library door opened. Ian stood there holding his laptop. His face had gone gray. "I need you to see this." Ian angled the laptop so all of us could see and split the screen. On the left, Northline's certification profile listed my name beside 51% ownership. Beneath it, a statement claimed I exercised direct control over long-term decisions, financial commitments, and daily management. The access history showed dozens of entries under my name. Not one came from Colorado. Most came from an internet address near Mom's house. The rest came from Northline's office. "Every owner is required to access the portal personally," Ian said. "I never did. I can see that." Grant crossed his arms. "Remote access happens." Ian tapped one of the entries. "Not through a device registered to Diane Ellison." Mom gripped the back of a chair. On the right side of the screen, Ian opened a file labeled Owner Consent Verification. My face filled the window. My voice said, "Yes, use whatever you need." The image cut. I trust Grant to handle it. The image cut again. I cannot manage it myself right now. The lighting changed between every sentence. So did my clothing. The first clip came from a call about Mom's surgery. The second came from a message about selling my old car. The third was recorded after retirement, when I explained why I could not organize a family reunion. Natalie covered her mouth. Grant said she said every word. Ian left the 3 mismatched frames visible beside the access history. Not in the same conversation. It reflects what she agreed to. No, I said, it reflects what you needed me to agree to. Ian opened the upload record beneath both windows. The file had been submitted from Mom's account 3 days after I refused Grant's request to invest in Northline. The band outside reached the end of a song. No one moved before the last note disappeared. Mom looked at me. "You were never supposed to see that." Grant stepped toward her. "Mom, stop talking. I was trying to protect you." I said stop. Ian turned the laptop slightly away from him. "Protect him from what?" Mom pressed the napkin against her palm. The company was almost through certification. The loan was already signed. Grant said the papers were temporary. Natalie stared at him. "Temporary until when?" "Until Northline was stable," Grant said. "And then we would restructure, with Mara's knowledge?" He said nothing. Mom answered for him. She didn't need to be involved. 51% ownership did not require my involvement, I asked. "You have retirement income, medical coverage, a house." Grant had employees, investors, a future. The list came without a pause, smooth from repetition. "What did I have?" Her face tightened. "You had already been recognized." She glanced at the ribbon slides on the table, then at Grant. A medal, a ceremony, a photograph. Her eyes moved between them as if my share had already been counted, and whatever remained could be transferred to the child she believed still needed a future. Ian opened Northline's executive email archive and searched my name. The first message was from Grant to Mom. "The first scan is too dark. Use the page from her medical folder. The signature is cleaner." The second concerned the consent video. "Pull the sentences from the family calls." She said all of it. "We are only putting the agreement into one file." Natalie stepped back from him. Grant raised both hands. "This is being taken out of context." Ian looked at the screen. "You wrote the context." Then he opened the message sent that morning. Roe signed the flying cross package. "He will know the rack. Get it off before family photos." The cursor blinked beneath the final sentence. Outside the library, the band began another song. The bass traveled through the wall. Mom sat down, not gracefully. Her legs simply stopped supporting her. I looked at the cream sewing kit on the table. "You knew who he was." Grant showed me the program. "You knew he might recognize me." "I knew he might ask questions, so you removed the answers." Her face folded for 1 second, then fear rebuilt it. "The house is collateral. If the lender calls the loan, I lose it." Her eyes went to the laptop, then to Grant, measuring what the truth would cost her. Grant moved toward the laptop. Ian stood. "I am preserving every company record and withdrawing our ability to certify the proposal." "You cannot withdraw it. I can stop representing it as valid." "The lender will call the loan." "Yes, 43 people lose their jobs." Ian kept his eyes on the preservation screen. Grant received no softer answer. Grant turned to Arthur. "This still does not prove the rescue story belongs to her." Arthur opened the silver case. Inside was a folded copy of a crew record he kept with the names of people lost under commands he had overseen. He placed it on the table. His finger moved to the aircraft commander line. Mara Jean Ellison, then to the crew chief, Benjamin Calder. Then to the passenger count, 6 survivors. "I signed the recommendation," Arthur said. Major Ellison commanded the aircraft. Grant pointed toward the ballroom. "That photograph has been public for years. The photograph, perhaps." Arthur looked at the whistle in my hand. The melted edge was not. He folded the record again. The logo came from the whistle. The language came from the citation. The first-person story came from the aircraft commander. His eyes settled on Grant. "A citation can be rewritten. A crew record cannot." The library door had drifted open. Several guests stood in the hallway. Behind them, the music had stopped. Grant saw the audience and straightened his jacket. "This is a private family matter." Ian closed the ownership portal. "No, it is a corporate matter." Natalie removed the ring from Grant's finger and placed it on the table. "It had belonged to her father, and a financial one," she said. Grant stared at the ring. You cannot end a marriage over paperwork. Natalie looked at the consent video frozen on the screen. This is not paperwork. This is editing a person until she says what you need. Grant looked at me last. His expression asked for the version of me he understood. The older sister who paid the bill. The officer who took responsibility. The daughter who could survive one more thing. Tell them, he said. Tell them I was trying to save the company. You were trying to own the part of me people respected. You're going to destroy 43 jobs over forms? I placed the blood-stained ribbons and the broken clutch back on the table between us. You used my name as collateral, then I walked out with the empty bar still on my chest. No one called the police that night. There were no handcuffs beside the wedding cake. Real consequences rarely arrive with the timing people expect from stories. They begin with smaller sounds, a laptop closing, a lawyer asking everyone not to delete anything. A bride telling her sister to bring the car around. Natalie left the resort in a gray travel dress with her wedding gown folded into a garment bag. The next morning, she hired her own lawyer and began separating her money from Northline. The legal end of the marriage took time, but she never returned Grant's ring. Ian sent preservation notices to Northline's counsel and technology provider. He disabled his own administrative access afterward so no one could accuse him of altering the system. Mom found me near the service corridor. She had cleaned the blood from her hand. A narrow bandage crossed her palm. The cream sewing kit was pressed against her chest. Are you really going to let me lose the house? Not how could Grant do this? Not what did I do to you, the house. I am not the lender. You know what I mean? Yes, I do. Grant made mistakes. He forged my ownership. He was desperate. He built a consent video from private conversations. He believed you would agree if he had time to explain. You removed my ribbons because you knew General Rowe might recognize them. Her mouth tightened. I was trying to get us through one day. One photograph, one day, one announcement. After the contract came through, we could have fixed everything. How? She looked away. When did you take my discharge record? You had boxes everywhere after the hospital. That was not my question. You were in no condition to organize them. When? When you were recovering at my house. I remembered pain medication. Curtains kept half closed. Mom answering my phone because sound triggered headaches, and forms beside my bed with tabs marking where I needed to sign. You took it while I could not protect it. I was helping you. Northline did not exist to help me. Her eyes filled. You were always stronger than Grant. She emphasized stronger and tightened the cream sewing kit against her chest. The word landed like another object she expected me to carry. You keep saying that as though strength makes a person public property. I am your mother. That is a relationship, not ownership. She began to cry. I did not hold her. I let the space between us remain empty. The federal proposal was withdrawn. Northline lost its veteran-owned certification after review. The lender called the bridge loan, and Mom sold the house before foreclosure could take it. Grant blamed me for every box she packed. I knew because he sent letters after I blocked his number. The investigation moved slowly. He was not dragged away in handcuffs. He spent months paying lawyers, answering questions, and watching former employees describe decisions he believed belonged only to him. Northline's equipment was tied to the loan. If it had been sold immediately, the workers who had never touched the false records would have lost their jobs, and several local emergency agreements would have failed. My lawyer explained that I could pursue dissolution and let the company collapse. What happens to the warehouse staff? I asked. They become creditors. In plain English, they receive very little. Grant had used those people as a shield. That did not mean they deserved to be crushed when the shield broke. I agreed to a settlement that removed Grant from management, funded 6 additional weeks of payroll, and allowed a legitimate veteran disaster response organization to purchase the trucks, generators, and water systems. 28 Northline employees accepted jobs with the new organization. Not everyone was saved. That was another lesson I had spent too long resisting. Protecting innocent people did not mean guaranteeing that no one would suffer. It meant refusing to use their suffering as leverage. Mom wrote 6 times that year. I answered the 4th letter because she finally wrote that she had blamed me for the house rather than admit Grant had cost her the house, and she had helped him do it. She did not ask me to forgive her. I read that sentence twice before I answered. I wrote back 3 sentences. I am glad you are safe. I am not ready to see you. Please do not send messages through other relatives. Months later, a padded envelope arrived. Inside was the broken clutch back I had left on the library table. There was no note. The bent metal rested in my palm, returned by the same hand that had broken it. For once the damage arrived without an excuse. I placed it beside the restored ribbon rack in a box at home. I did not display the rack, I did not hide it either. A year after the wedding, the Veteran Response Group invited me to its new training center. The building had once been Northline's warehouse. Grant's office was gone. His quotations had been removed from the glass walls. The orange logo no longer appeared on the trucks. At the far end of the building was a classroom. A glass case hung beside the door. Inside it was the orange whistle. Beneath it was a card listing every member of my crew. Ben Calder's name was there. Mine was not larger. The card did not mention Grant, Northline, or my medal. It said rescue equipment belongs to the people who may need it next, not to the person whose name appears in the story. A training supervisor asked whether the display was all right. Yes, I said. Then I noticed a bright orange whistle hanging from every trainee's vest. Unmelted, ready to work, I thought about the family photograph we never took. There would never be an image of all of us beneath white roses, smiling while my mother hid my ribbons and my brother built a future on my name. I was grateful for that. Some photographs preserve a family. Others preserve the lie a family has agreed to tell. The empty space on my ribbon bar did not make me less decorated. It made the removal impossible to ignore. Erasure leaves a shape. A lighter patch of fabric, 2 small holes, a broken piece of metal on the floor. A place where the truth used to be, waiting for someone who remembers its outline. Some people erase your name because they hate you. Others do it because they believe loving you gives them the right to use it. If this story reminds you of someone whose strength was used against them, share it with them. I learned to survive both, and I learned to leave the empty space visible.